Welcome everybody to the Green Effect podcast. We are up to episode number 6. This is part 1, and today's episode features Glen Sutherland, who is the host of his own podcast. So finally we have another podcaster on my podcast, and his podcast is called A Canadian Investing in the US. So always lots of questions around U.S. real estate and whether or not it is something that can be lucrative. So in part 1, we talk about why even bother investing in U.S. real estate. Then we start to talk about the difference in the landlord tenant rules. You'll be surprised how huge the differences are. How was it buying his first property? Must have been pretty nervous, and I tell you right now it was. What's turnkey versus buying your own property? How's the closing process different? I watch way too much HGTV. I want to know, is it for real? Is it a lot longer? Is it shorter? Stuff like that. And then we give completely unsolicited tax information on what it's like purchasing a property. This episode, if you have any interest in purchasing U.S. real estate as investment, this is a great start for you. Part 1 of 2 featuring Glen Sutherland. And here we go.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Welcome, everybody, to the Green Effect Podcast. Today, we've got Glen Sutherland. Glen Sutherland is also a podcaster, and he has a podcast called A Canadian Investing in the US. So welcome, Glen.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
No problem. I came across your podcast quite by accident, and I was listening to it, and I thought you fit perfectly for the show. You know, you're a guy doing some really cool stuff, and I want to have you on and talk about some of your different experiences. So again, thanks for coming on.
Oh, great.
So we always ask this of every guest: how did we meet?
Well, Stephen and I met. I don't actually know how we got to the same branch that you work at, but Stephen set up a mortgage for me on, I believe, my property just off of Franklin Boulevard in Cambridge 3 years ago?
Many moons ago.
Yeah,
it was many moons ago.
4 years ago, something like that, before the real estate little bump we got here in Cambridge. So that property turned out to work pretty nice.
Yep. Yeah, you and I've had similar, we'll say, fortunes before the all hell broke loose in 2016.
So, yeah.
So yeah, you benefited like I did. So that's a good thing that way. So okay, so talk to me a little bit about more personally, what do you do for work? Tell me about your path.
Well, for work, it's actually not that related to what I do with the real estate investing. I fix like bank machines, server, Lexmark printers, Lenovo laptops and desktops. So I'm more of a hardware IT guy. And yeah, it's not really related to what I do with the real estate, but I love the real estate. And someday, very soon, it'll if anyone's listening from work, it's far away. But someday I will eventually just do this full time instead of the other, which is I have the months where I'm like, hey, I made as much money as my job, and I have months where I'm like, no, I can't do this permanently. It just because there's ups and downs and bills and everything else. But I don't know if I even answered the question. I might have got completely off.
I asked that question because I think sometimes people think getting into investing in real estate, whether it's Canada or the U.S., is something we got to have. You got to be a certain income, or you got to have a certain education or whatever. But anybody, if they've got the right advice and the right team around them, can really get into this.
Yes, that's really, really true. And people think that they have to have a lot of money even, and that's not even true. Like if you are a hard worker, you can go find deals. And if you have a deal that's like actually, even if you can refinance out a partner, you could find joint ventures, you can find private money just to even get you to the spot where you can get your mortgage. Like there's lots of ways around this, but you don't need anything. Like you just need some hustle.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a key thing, right? Hustle, just getting it done, right?
Yep.
And we also have something in common too, because I always get teased all the time. I'm not a big suit, tie guy, that sort of thing. So sometimes I'll walk into a branch maybe I'm not known at, and they ask me, are you here to fix the printer? Are you here to fix the computer? So you and I have some of that in common too. We dress the same. So so why? I like asking this question of investors too. Of all the things you could have done, you could have bought Google stock, could have bought Apple, could have bought whatever you want. Why did you get into investing in real estate? What piqued your interest?
Well, I have done that same stuff. I bought BlackBerry stock. I rode.
Tell me you sold at the right time.
Well, I sold it not at the bottom. I think I bought it at like 15 and it went down to like 5, and I think I unloaded around 10. But it was, you know what? It's whatever you like to do. There's a million ways to make money and try to do your FIRE or your financial freedom, whatever you're trying to do. And I listen to a lot of stuff online, and I'm big into podcasts and YouTube stuff. And it's with real estate, there's just a lot more ways to win. And the thing is, a lot of people are like, oh, it's flips. You just gotta, force appreciation, sell the property. There's like, you go, okay, say even you're in a market that's only going to make 2% appreciation. If you're down in the States, there's certain ones that you're like, it's just a big cash flow market, and you go, well, that's garbage, I don't want 2%. But you're not making the 2%. 2% is on the purchase, the price of the house is going to appreciate 2%, but you only put down like, I don't know, 10 or 20 grand on that property. So you multiply that, because you're really putting down 20%, so it's really 5 times that. So you're really making 10% on your money.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then you're getting cash flow, you're getting depreciation. Like, there's lots of different. I know there's a fourth way. When I'm winging it, I need some notes.
Yeah, that's right. You got notes there. You're good. You're good. Yeah. So I think there's different ways. There's different ways to look at it. I think with real estate, there's risk. There's inherent risk, right? Yeah. It's going to happen. Does the risk outweigh that of maybe an investment portfolio? It depends what lets you sleep at night, right? I mean, investing is not for everybody.
No.
In either way, right?
No.
So as long as you're comfortable with it and you kind of understand it, I think that's important too. So
yeah.
So I want to get into some of the stuff you talk about in your podcast, and I think we've got to do the disclaimer. We're not lawyers.
Yeah,
we're not accountants.
Nope.
We're not anybody else that gives out really high-priced advice.
No.
You're a guy investing in real estate, and I do mortgages. That's about where this advice goes to. So tell me what gave you the thought to get into investing into U.S. real estate?
Well, I was doing Canadian real estate, and I think I had about 6 properties before I went down to the States. And I listened to a lot of podcasts, and 95, 99% of them out there are on American real estate. And one of the things that pushed me is I started buying farther and farther from where I live. So I have some property in Strathroy now, which is the other side of London. So it's now an hour and a half away from myself. And it's sort of like, well, if I can make that jump, could I make the jump to the States?
What's another few hours?
Yeah, exactly. and then you do it. Well, you learn about the benefits, and there's certain things that you pick your backyard. At least I did to start, and there's certain things that aren't as beneficial here as you could go to other places to do the same sort of thing, right? And so once you've made the bold step to cross the border, you go, well, I could pick, I can pick the place with the most landlord-friendly states. I could pick the place with the highest cash flow. I could pick the place where I want to buy a building, like a little fourplex or something, right beside an Amazon distribution center, and it's going to be full forever. And I'm going to have, if people don't pay their rent, I can kick them out. Whereas here, it's like a 3-month-ish process where you can, if you pick the right states, you could have them out in the same month that they are late in.
I think you said that in one of your podcasts. If they don't pay if the rent's due on the 1st, and they don't pay by like the 7th, they got to be up by the 15th or something.
It depends.
Crazy
it's state
like
specific. Everything is state specific. It's almost like different countries, the whole thing down there. But I think that might have been Texas I was referring to. Like, even I do mostly Alabama now. That's where my main focus is, and it's a little bit longer than that. It's about they were paid by the 3rd, I think I got the message from the property manager asking me if they wanted to do the eviction. And then I was like, well, what are we talking about? And trying to jog my memory. I think it was $200 or $300, and they'd have them out by the start of the next month. So I think it was like the first or the second of the following month, that's why whenever you go Google what the most landlord-friendly states are in the United States, there's a lot of them that don't show up that actually are still pretty landlord-friendly, like Ohio and Alabama, but they're not on the list. They're not the most landlord-friendly, because to hit the list of most landlord-friendly, they have to be able to do an eviction in the same month.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah, so that's one of the things there. And then like when you're looking for those, it's ones where the rulings, because there's a precedence that's been set in the laws, and so it's where they will most decisions are favorable to the landlord than the tenant. So if you're here, you have what you have here, and I'm not saying you can't make great money here, because I still have properties here and you can still do great things. It's just buying in very expensive cities is, you really got to have hustle. Like you got to have like double hustle, and it's just, you can still do it here and you can do a really great job here, but I've found it's easier. It's just like it's easier because there's a bigger population. You can pick better rules, laws.
Well, I think people like yourself are doing what you mentioned earlier. They're going to Strathroy, they're going to Wellesley, I got people shopping in Windsor,
St. Thomas and other side of London.
And it's tough. And I think I'm hearing you talk about some of the U.S. Maybe tenant types that you're going to get. And that's very similar to why someone would go to a Sarnia or a smaller town, say, where you got more lifelong tenants that have been there forever. They pay their rent. That's on time, generally good.
Yep.
And, for the most part, cash flow is pretty good, right? Yep. So now with some of the tenants that you've maybe had in the U.S., because the rules are tighter like that, do you find there's more obligation for them to get their rent paid on time? Or is there more of an urgency?
I think so. I haven't really had problems with rent, and there's other things that they can charge in the States to make sure your rent's on time, which you can't do here. So there's a late payment fee. So when they're late in Missouri, my property's there, I think I get $75 extra whenever they pay late. And it's usually they still pay by the 5th or something, because they don't want to get evicted. And so just for that 5 days, you'll get $75. And I think I got $90 this month from Alabama for one of them being late. They were a little bit later. I think they were around the 10th. And I've told my property management to be a little bit more, lenient, because I'm used to running properties here, and I'm used to being, I give them the N4 on the 2nd, and I'm not even looking to see if there's money in the account till the 15th. So yeah. I've gotten used to that. So I've basically told them, I don't want to start an eviction until at least like the 15th, but the law, I could start earlier. I can be getting off track. What was the question?
No, I was asking about the tenants, and you're going.
Tenants,
you're going where I want you to go, because it's. I think it's.
They know, right?
A good Canadian boy too, right? That's what we're used to up here. Yeah. You know what? Pay by the 10th. Pay by the 15th. Here's the N4, but you know what? When you get a chance, if you don't mind, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Americans just go a different direction with it, and it's funny because in my heart of hearts, I'm like, give them a little more time, but then. I heard one investor say,
get too far.
No, I heard one investor say, this is my business. This is my livelihood too. So I'm not, not trying to.
Yeah, you gotta. The tip I've heard is to make it very personal. You gotta almost make it so that the payment to your kid's RESP is the money from one of the rental properties. So you feel like, hey, you're not robbing me because I am lenient, but you're taking money from my kid, because I can't put the money in there until I get the money from you.
Wow, and that's so.
Because you have to make it hard. You have to make it to your heart, right? You gotta bring it so that I'm a nice guy, and I'm like, I had properties when I was brand new, 7 years ago, and I had properties that they fell behind 2 months, and you're like, that doesn't happen anymore. No, if you're not gonna I'm gonna go through the paperwork and through the landlord board, and I've done 2 evictions now, so.
And that's never pleasant at all for anybody.
Nope.
So wow, yeah, it's sounds like it's a different world down there. So your first property that you bought in the U.S., how was that? Was that nerve wracking? Were you prepared? How did it go? Smooth? Problems?
Well, off the start, which I'm not doing as much as I do. I'm not planning to do it anymore anyway. But I bought turnkey, which is basically, it's very different. So don't take that term with a grain of salt. Do some research. But I bought a property so that I knew the person who was selling it, who was actually a turnkey provider, who was a Canadian, who's down there, and he's in like 25 markets. And
So turnkey is what?
oh, sorry. Back to step one. Turnkey is where someone has bought a property, renovated the property, updated the property. So usually they'll get, if they have aluminum wire, and they get rid of aluminum. It varies from person to person. The one I bought, they take out and they change it to granite countertops, which is kind of ridiculous, but a lot of them don't do that because it doesn't make sense for rental. But they go through, renovate the property, they put tenants in place, and so basically you just buy the property off them, and it's just turnkey. Like there's a tenant in place, it's already running.
And they manage it.
And they manage it, or they outsource the management to another company.
Okay.
So I've done it both ways, where the turnkey provider does the management, and I've done it where they don't. And there is advantages to both. We could go into turnkey for like an hour, but turnkey, if you want to have them do everything, and you don't want to do turnkey, because ideally you'd like to have the renovation crew yourself and do the renovations yourself and make the money yourself.
Cheaper,
yeah, because you're paying for all these things, right? You're still buying the property for at or below market, but it's been all done. Everything's done for you. But if you buy it with someone who does everything and they keep it all in-house, they do their own property management, everything, the advantage is that they kind of have to, if there's a major break, they're still there, right? So you can just send over their crew to fix it, right? And it's on them because they told you it was a ready to rock property. But the disadvantage is if you want to grow, which is where I was starting with, that construction crew will never be your construction crew because they work for the turnkey provider. Like, you'll never get them to work for you. So like if you buy ones that are all split up, where the property management does, or like the turnkey provider has farmed out everything to other people, you can asked for receipts, you can get a hold of all these other people, and that's how I've created my construction crew down there. It's just stolen and borrowed from other people that I've used indirectly.
It's funny how going from investing in real estate, now you've gone into this, you're almost digressing into something different too, which is benefiting your business.
Yeah, well, you know what, ideally you want to buy something undervalued, and if you want to do that, you're basically doing like yellow letters, or you're trying to do a wholesaling type thing where you're trying to solicit people in distress and do it. That's not my thing. That sounds like worse. I'd rather work my 9 to 5 than do that. Mm-hmm. And so that isn't my thing. So the way that to actually, because you still want to buy it undervalued, because you make your money when you buy, is so you can buy properties that need a little bit of work, and you can negotiate because of that. And in certain markets, they'll just sit because no one wants them.
Yeah, and you see it on TV, and I know it's not the same. I get that part, but that seems to be a theme in the U.S., where you've got these distressed properties, maybe in areas where there is good vacancy for properties, and if you're getting more experience with it, like yourself, then it becomes very lucrative, and you got your team down there and the whole bit, right? So that's good. And, that's where it comes from experience, right?
Yeah.
So when you bought your first one, then did it?
Back to the fear.
Yeah, I hear it's different. I mean,
yes.
you got the term escrow. You've got realtors can close your deal. No, isn't that how it works?
No.
That's me watching too much HGTV. Okay,
so all the deals I've done, we use a title company. So it's kind of like a lawyer. It'd be like a paralegal kind of thing, right? If you were comparing it to Canada, right?
Yeah, we have like First Canadian Title, for example.
Yeah. So it's like a title company. So they basically do everything that a lawyer would do in Canada, only cheaper. And actually, my lawyer in Canada doesn't do a lot of stuff they used to do. They don't call the utilities and stuff anymore. So a lot of that stuff is still on your back if you need to do it. Which I'm finding you can get property management to do it. And a little tip, you can get them to go put on their name on the title or on the hydro and stuff just during the renovation, and they'll just bill you back, which is way easier because you get a bill sent to Canada, especially with this Canada Post strike, you might not get it.
Sure. And the Americans they're a little more old school. Like, there's postal mail, right? There's probably not a lot of online stuff, right?
It depends on the county, right? Because everything's county wise too, right? Instead of like provincial, so they have different things from county to county, right? So What were we talking?
Oh,
I go on sidetracks.
Yeah,
all the time.
no. Well, because there's a lot of different stuff that comes up when you go through this process, right? So,
Yeah,
so
so-
from a legal, paralegal
Yeah,
title,
so-
how did that go?
So escrow is kind of like the part where you're just during the transaction. Title company does all of it. Really, they do all the parts. In order to go down there, you're going to need, at the very least, an ITIN number, an International Tax ID number, which I get an accountant to do all of these things, right? I don't, because you can do that, and I've gotten a link recently from another guy in Kitchener, and he found a way to do it yourself, which you probably could do the ITIN number, but I wouldn't want to set up a corporation or an LLC or an LP or any of that stuff wrong. You don't want to have Canada Revenue or IRS on your back because it wasn't done right.
I did hear the IRS people are really nice, though.
I haven't
No,
had a problem.
that's not the case? Oh,
I don't
come
know.
on.
I don't deal with them, right? I have an
That's
accountant.
good. That's good. You don't want friends at the IRS.
I have an accountant, and he does the American stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Is there a lot of tax crossover? And so I don't have a lot of clients who do this. Are you reporting U.S. stuff on your Canadian? Do you do that?
Yes,
or
yeah,
you
you
do that, eh?
So you pay your taxes. You can file for corporation taxes for the United States corporation as of, I think it's the 10th or the 15th of January. They'll start accepting, the whatever tax returns. So you do that first, right? You want to get that one rolling faster than your personal one or whatever in Canada, or your corporate one in Canada. So you want to get that one first, that they have numbers on that you just copy into your Canadian tax return. And if you actually pay any tax in the States, first of all, you're doing it wrong. And second of all, there's a tax credit for that. So you'll get a discount on your taxes here, and it'll go right to the bottom line. It doesn't go on like as the top line thing that gets cut again. So, yeah.
Yeah, you got to report on both then.
Yeah, so you do record on both.
So you need an accountant that knows both sides of the fence.
So I use an accountant in Dearborn, Michigan, which is just across the way, and all their firm does, because this is what I wanted, was a firm that all they do is foreign tax returns. So they do them for all Aussies, Canadians, Chinese, Japanese, over people in Europe. They don't do U.S. tax returns for Americans. It's not their thing. They do it. That's what their specialty is, cross-border stuff. So that's who I want. I want someone who's going to know I don't want to get some surprise bill from either government.
Yeah, and I have heard that. I have accountant partners here, and one is certified, or I'm sure I butchered the term for that, but he's qualified in both countries, and that's what he specializes in. And I know he's told me sometimes there's lawyers that say they know the U.S. system, but they don't. They're not, again, certified, qualified, whatever, in the U.S. So, yeah, you want someone who knows their stuff, right?
And there are ones in Canada that will do all the American stuff, but I found, this is just the ones I've seen. I've only talked to two of them. But it tends to be more expensive because they don't have licenses to set up like an LLC in the States. So they have to use an attorney or an accountant in the States as well that's kind of behind the scenes. And so you're kind of paying for two people.
Yeah, so you kind of you got someone who just has to farm it out instead of doing
farm out certain parts of it. They can do parts of it, like they could do your ITIN, but they probably wouldn't want to do your LPLC.
Yeah. Now, how long does it take to? I want to come back to the closing. How long does it take to close a property? Again, I am HGTV expert, so I've heard short sale. I've heard escrow. You got your title guy going, right? So is it quick?
It depends what kind of sale it is, right? So if you're doing, I guess if you're trying to close with a mortgage company, they usually are wanting like 2 months to close. So that's a slow close, right?
So 2 months to close a mortgage.
To close a mortgage.
Wow. I hope all my clients are listening.
Yeah, they
2 months.
Be very happy. But
so when I get a call saying you got to close this in 5 days, I'm sorry, 2 months.
I found it's very difficult to work with the mortgage companies down there. There's some, but you're mostly looking at online banks. Like if you've heard of the bank before, if it's like a Chase or Wells Fargo, just don't waste your time. And then even the corner store banks, it's hit or miss. I just last night had an unapproval based on because I wasn't living in the United States. They could do foreign people, but we're investing, because I didn't live there. So I guess I should have mistyped my application a little differently, and I probably could have got that mortgage. But I found like online banks are the way to go.
It's like a Rocket, like we see the commercial of Rocket, Rocket, Quicken Rocket Mortgage,
Sure,
whatever
stuff like that. Costco has mortgages. I haven't actually worked with them, but
Yeah, is that the American way though? Like, are they just going online with this stuff?
I think so, and I think a lot of it is just easier to get licenses so that a lot more people can do it.
Got it. Okay. That makes
Which
a little bit of
also
sense.
means that you should vet your lender. So do a little research. Like when you get your loan documents, I like to check out the address, go to Google Street View. Does that building exist? Can you just go to Google, find a different phone number than what they've given you, verify, like just dot your T's, cross your I's, because there's a million little banks, and when you're dealing with a million little banks, it's easy for someone from, I'm not going to name the country, but like from somewhere in another part of the world to just say they're from a bank, right?
Wow.
Because it's harder to, it's not, you're not going to RBC at the corner, right? I'm calling from Canada, right? That most people are like, oh, they're not going to check this. And so I do a reverse lookup on the phone number. I want to see, and if it's a VoIP phone, forget it. I don't.
So this is where the financing world is different. Like, we're up here, we are like,
Canada
we're governed
has,
to the
Canada has some of the best in the world, I think.
Well, I know in the U.S., like exactly what you're saying. I'm in the U.S. quite a bit myself, and you go down there and it's ma and pa bank, and it's the one building. So to your point, you gotta,
if you get wealthy enough down there was one of the guys I was talking to, and he's like, oh yeah, we just made millions this year. We're thinking about opening a bank. You're like, that's not even a conversation you have in Canada.
That's awesome. I'm gonna put my house right between that RBC and that BMO right there. My bank.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the American way.
And
I don't know this for sure, but I think that's part of what happened in
But you
08
don't
too.
have to go this like wild route either, right? Because there are Canadian banks in the United States.
Yep.
So RBC is in Georgia and Florida.
Yeah. TD's
TD,
down there.
TD's down there too.
Yeah.
Similar spots. Actually, they're kind of spread around. Chicago's more in the north. BMO Harris is more in the north.
Yeah, BMO Harris has always been big in the central Midwest there.
So I've found they'll give you pretty good rates and terms, all of them, if you are buying a vacation rental. So you might be able to put that in your back pocket for the first one, but you might be committing mortgage fraud. Anyway.
Which is not good.
No, it's not good. But after that, if you want to actually fully disclose that you're doing rental property, which I did to them, and they're more going to be down in the low loan to value. So the rates are good, but and they're still better than the online banks in the States.
So 40% down?
No, 50%
Okay.
down. And that's so 50 with TD and Royal. But I've found, or RBC, sorry, in the States, they're not
RBC Bank.
RBC Bank in the States, they're not Royal, and BMO isn't BMO down there. They're BMO Harris.
That's right.
But BMO Harris, whenever I tried to do it with them, this changed though the last time I talked to them. But they were asking me, they're saying I had to move all my investments from whatever I bank at here in Canada to Bank of Montreal in Canada, and I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm not doing all this work. And so I was just like walked away. I'm like, I'm not changing stuff from all these places. I have it all over the place. I'm like,
wow. I wonder if that has to do with the American regulations, maybe?
I think that they wanted security, and they wanted it in their system to be sure, right? They could see it then, because like BMO Harris could see BMO Canada, but they couldn't see like RBC or TD in Canada.
Right. Okay. And same thing with RBC. So
Yeah,
I believe they can.
Yeah, they might be able.
I'm a client of both, and of both RBC Bank and RBC Royal Bank, and I know.
Yeah.
I think they can see back and forth. I know I can with.
Yeah,
my own
and
stuff,
you do my banking down with RBC in Georgia is where I have my corporation, my LLC/LP down there is with Royal Bank or RBC USA and RBC Bank, and I have a personal account there too, which they aren't actually linked at all, but you if you call the bank and you give them both account numbers, you can get money transferred from your corporation account to your personal American account in Georgia, And then once you get into a personal account, the money is basically in Canada. You can just transfer it. It's right into RBC in Kitchener. They just right like that. It's just they show up and you just do, oh, you want to do it? It's like drop down for cross border, and it instantly shows up.
Now, this is not an advertisement for RBC Bank, but that's pretty cool, and it is the way it works. Just saying. Just saying. This was not scripted.
No, this isn't scripted, but I knew who I'm working with, so I figured I'd
Oh, that a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all kidding aside, it is, and I mean, I'm biased. I don't have the TD stuff, I don't have the BMO stuff, but the RBC stuff is pretty cool that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And there you have it, part 1 of 2 with Glen Sutherland, the author of his own podcast, A Canadian Investing in Real Estate. If this has piqued your interest, make sure you go download his podcast on your favorite podcatcher. It's actually a great listen, all about his own experiences. Make sure you listen into part 2, which will be coming up shortly. That's all about corporations in the US, so LLC and LP and liability, and comparing the Canadian system a little bit to the US system. Again, completely unsolicited advice, as well as the differences between the banking process here in Canada compared to the US, and what they look for in particular non-residents. So look for that episode to come out shortly, and until next time, we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.